مسيحي يدخل المسجد لأول مرة وقلبه يملأه الخوف. دخل باحثا عن إله مشترك، فصدم بغياب الكراسي وصمت الموسيقى وهيبة الركوع والسجود. لكن المفاجأة الكبرى لم تكن في القاعة الفارغة، بل في المواجهة النارية مع الإمام. هل كان عيسى مسلما؟ وماذا عن الإعدامات وقضايا المرأة؟
I'm a Christian and I went to a Muslim mosque for the first time. The reason that I went is because I wanted to learn more about the Muslim faith. I actually wanted to understand if we believed in the same God. And I wanted to learn directly from a Muslim imam, which is like a Muslim pastor, instead of learning from YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. I wanted to go directly to them. Honestly, I was scared to go inside of it. I kind of have like a fear, not of Muslims, but a fear of like, I don't want to disrespect them and have issues. Usually I go to a non-denominational church. So walking up to a mosque was a totally new experience.
So what are your first thoughts?
My first thoughts is I've never been to a mosque before. It looks very modern. It's Friday and I guess they're about to do service. So obviously Christians do church on Sunday. So I'm excited to see what the heck's about to happen. And I'll admit, I was still nervous walking in. Honestly, my biggest concern was just saying something that would offend Muslims. And the first surprise was, okay, taking off our shoes. I gotta make sure my phone is on silent. I don't know what this all says. Oh, it says pray. Okay. Everyone does that before they step inside. And I guess it makes sense because they treat their spaces sacred, so it makes sense they don't want to make a mess. And also it was interesting because their Sabbath day was on Friday in the middle of the day. But before their service started, I was able to sit down with an imam, which is pretty much a pastor for the Muslim faith. And I asked him about what would happen. So we're about to experience, I believe, you leading a mosque, and I've never been into a mosque or into a Muslim service, so like what's about to happen?
Well, it's pretty simple. What's going to happen is a sermon and congregational prayer. Okay. So our service is roughly half hour.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
One for the Muslims.
Yes, so our service, there's no choir, there's no images either. Our service takes place in a prayer hall. Of course, there's a pulpit, and there are parts of the sermon that will have quotations that take place in Arabic.
Oh, okay.
And we reference Quranic verses in particular. And then when the sermon is over, we do the congregational prayer together. So what will happen is that, in this case, me will stand in front of the congregation at a certain spot, and we'll do certain actions, standing and bowing, prostrating, and the congregation follows along.
Got it. Okay. And I actually was wearing shorts, so he actually let me borrow one of his outfits so I wasn't disrespecting anyone inside of the mosque. But anyways, we went inside and the prayers began. I was just sitting in the back, totally confused. Inside, it's totally different from my church. There's no chairs, there's no screens, there's no smoke machines. It was just a big empty room with carpets laid on the ground. At the front, there was this little niche at the wall, which just had a symbol on it, which I later learned was a name for God, which they call Allah. Then suddenly, I heard the call to prayer.
Alhamdulillah.
My church has countdown timers before the church starts. This one was calling us straight into prayer, which reminded me that there's something bigger than my regular schedule happening. Then their imam got up to speak.
You know how people, when they come into religion, they're very enthusiastic. Very enthusiastic.
It was a little confusing to me because he was going in between speaking English and Arabic. And his service was a lot about Muhammad and how Muhammad preached about peace and love. It was different than what I expected because I didn't think that Muslims put such a big emphasis on Muhammad, but then I learned later that you have to accept Muhammad in order to be
a Muslim. Where in the Christian faith, for example, my church never talks about Paul or Moses or any of the other prophets. We more focus on like the teachings of the Bible and how to practically use it versus the people that are in the Bible. And then came the prayer. Everyone was lined up in straight lines, and then they were like chanting things, standing up, then bending over, then kneeling on the ground, and then kind of doing that a few times. Versus, so at my church, whenever we do prayer, usually the pastor asks everyone to stand up, usually raise our hands and bow our head, or we put our hands over our heart while we say prayer. So this, again, was completely different. And after the service, I sat down with the imam and asked him some tough questions.
The Quran says no violence against women, but then I saw and have heard, and there's a stereotype of violence against women. Why is there that contradiction?
There is no place on earth that executes women for not wearing a headscarf. I don't know where you came across that.
Well, there was a famous young woman that took off her headscarf, went missing, and then there was a bunch of women who were taking off the headscarf. This is like on the news, and it was
You're talking about, are you talking about recently? In the last like 10 years? You're talking about, first of all, they did not execute her. So we're delving into politics, which fortunately I have a little bit of information about. You're talking about, I think her name is Mahsa Amini, if I'm not mistaken. I think that's what you're talking about.
Yeah, she was a young girl.
You're talking about in Iran.
Yeah.
No one executed her. That's not, no one even claims that. You saw a video that claimed that.
She's still alive?
She died in the police station, and so the argument was whether it was police brutality or she had a heart attack. There was never an execution for that. That is one of those examples of broad misrepresentations, deliberate misrepresentations.
So after speaking to the imam for about an hour, I definitely got a brand new understanding of the Muslim faith. There was a few things that were very surprising, like I did not think or know that the Muslims actually believed in Jesus.
Jesus appeared to him and said, I am the way, the truth, and the life. There is no other way to the Father except through me.
So I already believe in Jesus. So Jesus doesn't need to come to me like that because I already believe in Jesus. I already believe that he was somebody whom God sent.
I also didn't know that they believe or like to quote from the Bible. So the imam was actually pointing out scripture to back up his points most of our conversation, which I thought was super interesting. It was a little bit frustrating because sometimes he would point out scripture, but then when I pointed out scripture, my scripture was always false or incorrect. They also believe that Jesus was born of a virgin. He was sinless, but they do not acknowledge his crucifixion, and they don't acknowledge that he was God in the flesh. He also tried to make an argument that Jesus was a Muslim.
Do you believe Jesus was Muslim?
Of course, but you have to understand what a Muslim means. Muslim doesn't see. This is an issue that keeps getting asked, and I don't understand why people don't get what we're saying. Because I don't understand why people don't get it. Muslim is just an Arabic word which means submission to God. In fact, let me invert the question: was Jesus a Christian?
Yeah.
Do you agree with him?
He wouldn't use that exact word.
He would, not only would not use that exact word, according to the Bible, the followers of Jesus were called Christians by their enemies. Jesus never used the term Christian, according to the Bible.
Which honestly was a little bit frustrating because he said Muslim means that Jesus believes in one God, but our definition today of Muslims is they believe in one God and they have to believe that Muhammad was a prophet. And if Jesus came, hundreds of years before Muhammad was born, how could Jesus be Muslim? But besides that, the imam was super nice guy. He was funny.
So if you're not married, you're about to be married.
Okay. Oh, you get married in this?
I'm saying because you look good in it.
No, I'm taking it.
Make sure I put that on camera.
There were some times where the conversation was a little intense and I could tell he was very defensive. And I wasn't trying to come at him with a debate about Christianity versus Muslims. But overall, super nice guy. Everybody there was very peaceful, very nice. It was very welcoming. And one of my main thoughts is
there was nothing to be really fearful about. It was very short. It was very quick. I did notice some differences between how Christians worship and how Muslims worship.
What was the biggest difference?
Honestly, biggest difference between like the church that I go to and this mosque was like here there's like no chairs. It's just you sit on the ground. There's no music. There's no lights. There's no screens. There's no pamphlets. It's just the pastor goes up, says what they, his sermon. They do their ritual, and then that's it.
While I was sitting there on the floor, kind of watching all this, I try to envision that I was a person that was born in the Middle East, and this is all that I knew. And I just try to think about, like, would I actually be Muslim if I was born in a Muslim country? I don't know, but I do know that most of the people that I've ever met that are Muslim are extremely peaceful. They're very nice. They're normal people. Obviously, the media tries to portray, the extreme side of the faith, but that's definitely not what I've experienced in real life.
لا تنسوا الإعجاب بالفيديو والاشتراك في قناة فيرا. نحن هنا لننقل لكم صوت الباحثين عن الحق من كل بقاع الأرض.